the opposite of God's plan for salvation. And only His plan will work, will work. Only God's plan for salvation will work. Holding grievances is the opposite of God's plan for salvation. And only His plan will work, will work. Only God's plan for salvation will work, will work. Only God's plan for salvation will work. Thank you so much for joining me today and studying A Course in Miracles. This is, we're reading from the Foundation for Inner Peace version this year. And this is, we're ready for Lesson 71, Wednesday, March the 12th of 2025. And I'm recording this a few days early on Sunday morning. Nice, comfortable day for me. Only God's plan for salvation will work. And I'm Forgiveness Willie, teaching forgiveness from the Ozarks. And again, so glad you've come to join me. Only God's plan for salvation will work. You may not realize that the ego has set up a plan for salvation in opposition to God's. It is this plan in which you believe. Since it is the opposite of God's, you also believe that to accept God's plan in place of the ego's is to be damned. Since your plan is the opposite of God's, or the ego's plan, which you're following, since it is the opposite of God's, you also believe that to accept God's plan in place of the ego's is to be damned. This sounds preposterous, of course, yet after we have considered just what the ego's plan is, perhaps you will realize, however preposterous it may be, you do believe it. Paragraph 2. The ego's plan for salvation centers around holding grievances. It maintains that if someone else spoke or acted differently, if some external circumstance or event were changed, you would be saved. Thus, the source of salvation is constantly perceived as outside yourself in those cloud patterns. Thus, the source of salvation is constantly perceived as outside yourself. Each grievance you hold is a declaration and an assertion in which you believe that says, if this were different, I would be saved, or if this were different, I would be happy. The change of mind necessary for salvation is thus demanded of everyone and everything, except yourself. The role assigned to your own mind in this plan, then, is simply to determine what, other than itself, must change if you are to be saved. According to this insane plan, any perceived source of salvation is acceptable, provided that it will not work. This ensures that the fruitless search will continue, for the illusion persists that although this hope has always failed, there is still grounds for hope in other places and in other things. Another person will yet serve better. Another situation will yet offer success. Paragraph 4. Such is the ego's plan for your salvation. Surely you can see how it is in strict accord with the ego's basic doctrine. Seek but do not find. Search for love in all the wrong places, as Abraham says. For what could more surely guarantee that you will not find salvation than to channelize all your efforts in searching for it where it is not? That's Abraham Hicks that says that. Not Abraham the patriarch in the Bible. Paragraph 5. God's plan for salvation works simply because by following His direction, you seek for salvation where it is. But if you are to succeed, as God promises you will, you must be willing to seek there only. Otherwise, your purpose is divided, and you will attempt to follow two plans for salvation that are diametrically opposed in all ways. The result can only bring confusion, misery, and a deep sense of failure and despair. How can you escape all this? Very simply. The idea for today is the answer. Only God's plan for salvation will work. There can be no real conflict about this because there is no possible alternative to God's plan that will save you. His is the only plan that is certain in its outcome. His is the only plan that must succeed. Let us practice recognizing this certainty today, and let us rejoice that there is an answer to what seems to be a conflict with no resolution possible. He gets you a miracle. All things are possible to God. Salvation must be yours because of His plan, which cannot fail. Begin the 2 longer practice periods for today by thinking about today's idea and realizing that it contains 2 parts, each making equal contribution to the whole. God's plan for your salvation will work, and other plans will not. That's the 2 parts, that God's plan for salvation works, and other plans, looking outside yourself, won't work. Trying to get someone to change, to be doing, or someone out to be out of your life and someone new in your life, all those kind of things. Those are mistaken concepts that won't bring your happiness into your life, and certainly won't bring peace. And we're supposed to do 2 longer practice periods lasting 10 to 15 minutes today, and then of course your frequent shorter practice periods throughout the day, every few minutes. God's plan for your salvation will work, and other plans will not. Do not allow yourself to become depressed or angry at the second part, that other plans will not work, because it is inerrant in the first. Only God's plan will work. God's plan for salvation will work, and other plans will not. Do not allow yourself to become depressed or angry at the second part. It is inerrant in the first. And in the first part is your full release from all your own insane attempts and mad proposals to free yourself. They have led to depression and anger, but God's plan will succeed. It will lead to release and joy. Remembering this, let us devote the remainder of the extended practice periods to asking God to reveal His plan to us. Ask Him very specifically, what would you have me do, God? Where would you have me go? What would you have me say, and to whom? He says He wants us to ask that very specifically. He's not talking about only the general idea that God's plan for salvation will work, but also very specifically, what are you going to do today to serve the plan, to be part of the kingdom of heaven, the kingdom of joy? Give him full charge of the rest of the practice period of your 10 to 15 minute practice period twice today. Start off by saying, only God's plan for salvation will work. And then ask him very specifically, what would you have me do? Where would you have me go? What would you have me say, and to whom? Give him full charge of the rest of the practice period, and let him tell you what needs to be done by you in his plan for your salvation. He will answer in proportion to your willingness to hear. He will answer in proportion to your willingness to hear his voice. Refuse not to hear. The very fact that you are doing the exercises proves that you have some willingness to listen. This is enough to establish your claim to God's answer. And in the shorter practice periods, tell yourself often that God's plan for salvation and only his will work. Be alert to all temptation to hold grievances today, and respond to them with this form of today's idea. Holding grievances is the opposite of God's plan for salvation, and only his plan will work. Try to remember today's idea some 6 or 7 times an hour, so every 10 minutes or so. There could be no better way to spend a half a minute or less than to remember the source of your salvation and to see it where it is. And during those every few minutes, you're going to tell yourself, holding grievances is the opposite of God's plan for salvation, and only his plan will work. Okay? And you want to be alert today to holding grievances. If you notice yourself kind of upset about something, tell yourself, remind yourself, holding grievances is the opposite of God's plan for salvation, and only his plan will work. Okay? And then certainly if you have a grievance, well, then let it go in place of God's plan. Ask God very specifically, what should I do? Well, how should I think? He'll show you. The only thing that keeps you from hearing it is your willingness to listen. Okay, let's go look in our text reading now. And we're ready for, in chapter 8, the journey back, the last section, healing as corrected perception. I said before that the Holy Spirit is the answer. He is the answer to everything because he knows what the answer to everything is. The ego does not know what a real question is, although it asks an endless number. Yet you can learn this as you learn to question the value of the ego and thus establish your ability to evaluate its questions. When the ego tempts you to sickness, do not ask the Holy Spirit to heal the body, for this would merely be to accept the ego's belief that the body is the proper aim of healing. Ask rather that the Holy Spirit teach you the right perception of the body, for perception alone can be distorted. Only perception can be sick, because only perception can be wrong. 2. Wrong perception is the wish that things be as they are not. There's those grievances again, the opposite of God's plan. Wrong perception is the wish that things be as they are not. The reality of everything is totally harmless, because total harmlessness is the condition of its reality. It is also the condition of your awareness of its reality. You do not have to seek reality. It will seek you and find you when you meet its conditions. Its conditions are part of what it is, and this part only is up to you. The rest is of itself. You need do so little because your little part is so powerful that it will bring the whole to you. Accept then your little part and let the whole be yours. 3. Wholeness heals because it is of the mind. All forms of sickness, even unto death, are physical expressions of the fear of awakening. They are attempts to reinforce sleeping out of fear of waking. This is a pathetic way of trying not to see by rendering the faculties for seeing ineffectual. Rest in peace is a blessing for the living, not the dead, because rest comes from waking, not from sleeping. Sleep is withdrawing. Waking is joining. Dreams are illusions of joining because they reflect the ego's distorted notion about what joining is. Yet the Holy Spirit, too, has use for sleep and can use dreams on behalf of waking if you will let Him. 4. Let Him use your dreams. You'll learn a lot. How you wake is the sign of how you have used sleep. To whom did you give it? Under which teacher did you place it? Whenever you wake dispiritedly, it was not given to the Holy Spirit. Only when you awaken joyously have you utilized sleep according to His purpose. You can indeed be, in quotes, drugged by sleep if you've misused it on behalf of sickness. Sleep is no more a form of death than death is a form of unconsciousness. Complete unconsciousness is impossible. You can rest in peace only because you are awake. 5. Healing is release from the fear of waking and the substitution of the decision to wake. The decision to wake is the reflection of the will to love, since all healing involves replacing fear with love. All healing involves replacing fear with love. The Holy Spirit cannot distinguish among degrees of error, for if He taught that one form of sickness is more serious than another, He would be teaching that one error can be more real than another. His function is to distinguish only between the false and the true, replacing the false with the true. 6. The ego, which always wants to weaken the mind, tries to separate it from the body in an attempt to destroy it. Yet the ego actually believes that it is protecting it. This is because the ego believes that mind is dangerous and that to make mindless is to heal. But to make mindless is impossible, since it would mean to make nothing out of what God created. Let's read again on that. But to make mindless is impossible, since it would mean to make nothing out of what God created. The ego despises weakness, even though it makes every effort to induce it. The ego wants only what it hates. To the ego, this is perfectly sensible. Believing in the power of attack, the ego wants attack. Paragraph 7. The Bible enjoins you to be perfect, to heal all errors, to take no thought of the body as separate, and to accomplish all things in my name. This is not my name alone, for ours is a shared identification. Now, where does the Bible say that? It's all the way through it. But let me just mention a few if you want to do a little deeper study on that. Matthew chapter 5, verse 48, Mark 16:15, Luke 12:22, and John 14:14. I'll let you do your own study. We don't have the time today. But you can look at it, and you can find lots of other Bible verses. The Bible enjoins you to be perfect, to heal all errors, to take no thought of the body as separate, and to accomplish all things in my name. This is not my name alone, for ours is a shared identification. The name of God's Son is one, and you are enjoined to do the works of love because we share this oneness. Our minds are whole because they are one. If you are sick, you are withdrawing from me. Yet you cannot withdraw from me alone. You can only withdraw from yourself and me. 8. You have surely begun to realize that this is a very practical course and one that means exactly what it says. I would not ask you to do things you cannot do, and it is impossible that I could do things you cannot do. Given this, and given this quite literally, nothing can prevent you from doing exactly what I ask, and everything argues for your doing it. I give you no limits because God lays none upon you. When you limit yourself, you are not of one mind, and that is sickness. Yet sickness is not of the body, but of the mind. All forms of sickness are signs that the mind is split and does not accept a unified purpose. And the last paragraph, 9. The unification of purpose, then, is the Holy Spirit's only way of healing. This is because it is the only level at which healing means anything. The reestablishing of meaning in a chaotic thought system is the way to heal it. Your task is only to meet the conditions for meaning, since meaning itself is of God. Yet your return to meaning is essential to His, because your meaning is part of His. Your healing, then, is part of His health, since it is part of His wholeness. He cannot lose this, but you cannot know it. Yet it is still His will for you, and His will must stand forever and in all things. So even if you get kind of lost, you aren't lost to God, and He'll make sure that you find His will. Be ye perfect even as your Father in heaven is perfect, was that Matthew chapter 5 and verse 48 we just talked about. Okay, let's see. Only God's plan for salvation will work. Holding grievances is the opposite of God's plan for salvation, and only His plan will work. Tell yourself that many times today. What's going on around the world? Well, it's still Ramadan and Allah of the Baha'i, Lent, and the Great Lent of the Orthodox, all going on. Girl Scout Day, the Girl Scouts was founded on this day in 1912. Aztec New Year today. Happy New Year to you folks that live down in Mexico. I guess it's a big holiday in Mexico, in some places. Aztec New Year. Happy New Year. And I found that there's actually a couple days. The 12th is common, but there's another day later on, so we'll probably say it again, that a lot of people count. Maybe it's two different New Years. One might be maybe the natural New Year, maybe, and maybe the other's the religious New Year or secular New Year. I don't know for sure. But I did find that there's a couple different days for the Aztec New Year. But today's one of them. No Smoking Day. Congratulations to all you all that quit smoking. Jessica quit smoking. It's been over a year now. Congratulations to all you people that quit smoking. Christian Day. Yesterday we had Muslim Day. Today we have Christian Day, I guess. Working Mom's Day. You know, lots to do on a working mom, taking care of the house plus working. Registered Dietitian Day. I like to think of myself as a dietitian, but I'm not registered, though. It's just stuff I've learned as I've studied, that what's good diet for the human body. Plant a Flower Day. I got a whole bunch of flowers that we're going to plant. World Day Against Cyber Censorship. Yeah, I'm not much into censorship of anything. Like people to have the freedom to make their own choices about what they want to read and look at. The Florida Pearl White Bearing or white strawberry. It's a June bearing. It's a Fragaria ananasa crossed with a chiloensis. Probably from Chile. Chiloensis. Anyway, it says of the Florida Pearl, Juneberry brightens your berry patch with a white strawberry that's larger than most. It's a unique low-acid flavor, is similar to pineapple and apricot, adding a tropical twist and standout color to fruit salads. Robust and easy to grow, zones 3 through 8. Florida Pearl, strawberry, a white kind of tropical flavored strawberry. And our word for peace is from the Amharic people of the Blue Nile River watershed, also known as the Abay watershed, or Blue Nile is also known as the Abay, in Ethiopia, in Africa. And the word is S-A-L-A-M, and I think it's pronounced salām. Kind of like salam, but I think it's salām. Okay, be sure to do your longer practice periods. for salvation will work, will work. Holding grievances is the opposite of God's plan for salvation. And only His plan will work, will work. Only God's plan for salvation will work. And then when you go into your longer practice, ask yourself, what would you have me do? Have me do? Where would you have me go? Have me go? What would you have me say? And to whom? Only God's plan for salvation will work. Tell yourself often today, holding grievances is the opposite of God's plan for salvation, and only His plan will work. Only God's plan for salvation will work. Salām.